Thank you, Brian. Terry, it's a pleasure to be here. 5 years, is that what you said, Jim? You've been doing this? It's been 5, it seems like 10, hasn't it? For nearly 10 years, we have been reporting concern, cautious pessimism, outright panic. Finally, I see perhaps, maybe, hopefully, some good news. So we did this 5 years ago, and I went back and I was looking through our presentation, and I was looking at the slides that we did. And we had 28 slides 5 years ago. That went to 32, 36, 40, and 44. You can see as sales declined, my slides went up. This year I have 6. Maybe that's good news too. This is simply new home closings. We are off 77% since the peak in 2004. We're off 7% down to 800 closings last year. 7% between 2009 and 2010. The good news is Delaware County was up 14%, Licking County was up 29%. The average price is up 8% to $257,000, and it's approaching the prices that we were seeing back in 2004 and 2005 in that period. So we are seeing some positive things going on out there. We had talked over several years about the sustainable level of construction. You know, between that period of the mid-90s up until we really started to climb in the number of sales in 2002, 3, and 4, we were averaging about 6,100 new home closings a year. And that was very steady. We'd be a few hundred up and a few hundred down, but we were very steady at that 6,100. We had hoped that at some point, and we built a model of anticipating how far below that 6,100 line we had to go in order to overcome the overbuilding that we did in that period in the middle part of the decade. Having looked at a lot of things since then, I really think that our sustainable level going forward is probably going to be more in the 34, 35, 3,600 homes a year range. I do think that if and when the dust ever totally settles in the economy, we'll have a couple of years where we're going to exceed that. But I think ultimately over the long range, we're going to be in that 34, 35, 3,600 units per year. Condominiums, we're off 75% from the peak year in 2004. But within the last year, the average price has increased, reaching $197,000 today. We had a sustainable average of around 2,000 units a year over a number of years going back to the mid-90s. I think going forward, for some reasons we'll talk about in a minute, that number is likely to be more in the 1,400 units a range as a sustainable level of construction. One of the things that I'm most concerned about are the resale trends. You know, while single family was off 77% and condominiums are off 75%, resales are only off about 28% between today and the peak several years ago, in 2005. The thing is that listings more recently have been declining, but not at the rate that sales are declining. Recall last year we talked a lot about the impact of an aging population. And one of our concerns was that as the baby boomers became renters, then they became buyers, and now that they're coming of retirement age, they're becoming sellers. And so if we look at the ratio in this slide of listings to buyers, we see that what we had at the beginning of this period of 2.4 sales per listing, per active listing, That has declined very steadily from 2.5 to 1.4 today. So basically what we really have is fewer buyers chasing more listings. That would manifest itself as more days on the market, for example. It would also manifest itself as a reduced price, as reduced expectations. And we all know stories. We talked about it, some of you this morning. We all know stories of the resale home that sold for 70%, 60%, 50% of the original cost. That's difficult for us to compete as builders when you have homes selling for that much less than they were built for. But we're coming into a time when we will be having more sellers than we do buyers. Buyers will have to decide if they're going to compromise on what they believe the asset was of that home, whether they're going to stay longer in that single-family home before they do whatever it is that we all planned on doing when we retired. And that's yet to be resolved, whether these people will stay longer in their single-family home, whether home health care is going to predominate to assist in doing that, whether they will compromise on their expectations. That all remains to be seen. The fact is that ratio is declining and will continue to decline, and we're going to have to deal with that at some point in the future. The other thing that falls within our residential area is apartments. Right now our vacancy rates are kind of mushing around in that 8 or 9% range. Doesn't really tell the whole story. Northwest, the apartment market has a vacancy rate in the 4 to 5% range. We get into the southwest and southeast areas, that's more likely to be 10, 11, 12, 13%. Northeast is kind of in the middle. We're in the 7 or 8 range in the northeast area. One of the things that really impacts what we're doing from the apartment standpoint in Columbus is Columbus has more functionally obsolete rental product than virtually any city that we monitor, and we're in most of them. When we really look at the number of super colossal properties that were built back in the 50s and 60s, properties with 800, 900 units, 1,000, 1,500 units that are functionally obsolete today. We look at the number of the thousands of Cardinal units that were built 20 years ago that are not maintained as they were originally, by and large, by Cardinal at the time. We look at the number of 2.5-story properties around that carry a very high vacancy rate. It's amazing that we have a vacancy rate of only 8 or 9%, given the character of a lot of the product that we have in this marketplace. So, given that, I'm quite impressed that we can maintain that vacancy rate of 8 or 9%. Where we have market with the same ratios of product, like in Indianapolis, for example, or Louisville, our market would be extremely tight. We're relatively tight at the high end, and most of our vacancy rates occur at the low end of the market. Basically, the takeaway, I'm looking for, we had 800 closings this year. I don't think we'll get to 900, but I don't think we're going to drop below 800 in 2011. I think we're going to be influenced, as usual, by public policy, by lending policy, and consumer confidence. Those are things that are outside of our control. All we can do is react. We can't control. I think we have more than ever today the potential for catastrophic events that can impact us that no one can anticipate. Nevertheless, I am expecting, all of those things considered, that we will have some modest increases in single-family sales for this year. As I said, I think we'll ultimately stabilize at that 3,500 range, and I think that more than ever that we're going to be influenced in the future by demographic changes going forward with our population. So there we are, cautiously optimistic. Thank you very much.